Welcome to First Unitarian.
We gather on Sundays to celebrate life, to witness to truth, and to be with each other in life's challenges and joys.
All week long, we're building a community, one connection and one person at a time. We care for each other and our children, we grow our souls, and we transform our world.
We're glad you're here.
Welcome home.
Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Rochester. I am not going to make you say good morning to me, but louder, because the people online have you covered. It is so good to be with you all. Here at First Unitarian, through spiritual connection in community, we listen deeply to others and ourselves. And you all, well, maybe not all of you, because I'm sure there are some of you who are here for the very first time, but many of you, you listen to me say this basically every week. So we're going to do it together, but I'll teach you. So through spiritual connection in community, and we're going to start with this middle section. Please repeat after me. We listen deeply to others and ourselves. We open to wonder and transformation. And we serve together with love and humility. Indeed, it takes all of us. I'm the Reverend Sherry Halliday Kwan. I'm the lead minister here, and I serve with my colleague, Reverend AJ, who's preaching today. We've got Joe on piano. Katya is helping lead music and offering a gift of music. We've got Brownlee Field, who's our worship associate, who's actually joining us by video. So we've got folks online, we've got folks in person, and all of you make Sunday morning happen. We, the church, we're not a building, we're a people with a mission. That's what you helped me say earlier, a collective purpose. And we make church happen all week long. But today on Sunday, we've got a heck of a lot of things going on. So we're going to spend some time together. We're going to sing. We're going to pray. AJ's going to preach. We're going to be with each other in community. But then after the service, I happen to know for a fact, because I know the photographer, that if you've got a tattoo and you want to be part of our spiritual tattoo show coming up in a couple of weeks, even if you haven't signed up, the photographer's got spots. She goes faster than the slots allow for. So even if you haven't signed up to share something about a tattoo of spiritual significance in your life, if that applies to you, sneak upstairs. She will fit you in. Later at 2 o'clock, our emerging pagan group will be celebrating Beltane. It's our May Day celebration, and it's on the East Lawn. We hope you'll join us. And right after the service, we've got coffee again. Folks are gathering. People among you have brewed coffee and cannot wait to pour you a cup and talk with you in person. If you're online, join us for conversation. Get to know each other. Being a part of a church isn't just about coming here and having a chance to rest your body and your bones for an hour. It is that, but it is also about connecting and about getting to know each other. And so I ask you to do a little bit of work with me now and say our chalice lighting together. We have Nora and Amy lighting our chalice here in person. If you're at home, you're probably lighting a chalice as well, so we invite you to join with us in our unison words. May the flame we now kindle inspire us to use our power to heal with love, to help with compassion, to bless with joy, and to seek liberation in the fullness of community. Here in community, I mixed up our order a little bit because we light our chalice, the central symbol of our faith, to mark that we're entering into this sacred time and this sacred space. And so I just want a moment to acknowledge that this sacred space for us here at First Unitarian is on the ancestral and contemporary land of the Seneca people, the keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee. Here in this sacred space, we gather in community to witness to each other. If you're going through a hard time or you're worried about someone else, I invite you to stop during or after the service with a chat chaplain online or there in the lobby and connect with someone just to share what's going on. Thank you for being with us here in worship.
My first house that I bought was on Britain Road in Greece. I made many home improvements to that house. The first floor had painted molding, and I discovered that underneath the paint was gumwood, which is a hardwood. I removed all the molding on that first floor and sent it off to a strip tank to have all the paint removed. And then I got it back and sanded it, stained it, and varnished it, and put it all back in, and it looked glorious when it was all done. That house only had one bathroom, and I remodeled the bathroom, and I assure you that whenever you're remodeling a bathroom when you only got one of them, you need to be quick. We invested a lot of time and energy in sweat equity into that house, and it really paid off when we sold the house. Our daughter just bought her first house, and it's a real fixer-upper. My wife and I were just down visiting her for 10 days and doing home improvements before she moved in. She has many years of home improvements ahead of her. And, by the way, she only has one bathroom in her house. We're passing along our history of sweat equity to our daughter. And isn't that why we come to church? Here we can pass along our principles, ethics, and values to our children. You can do that overtly through the RE program or by modeling good behaviors. In our case, modeling the good behavior that hard work and sweat equity pays off. And if you're remodeling the one bathroom in the house, you better be very quick. Good morning.
Today, we will be singing Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. and change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has stride us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Sometimes when we join in embodied practice, we use a box to do a dance move. But that's not what we're going to do today. It's back to the basics on how we enter into our bodies and our breath. We join in collective embodied practice to remind us that we are not merely heads and spirits, disembodied intellects, but hearts that beat inside flesh, that our presence on this earth is indeed physical. And so our box for today is a simple breathing technique called box breathing or square breathing, or sometimes rectangular breathing when you're not that precise. We're going to inhale and then hold our breath, and exhale and hold our breath. And we're going to do each of that for 4 seconds. For most people, 4 seconds is a little bit slower than we normally breathe when we're not thinking about it. But all of our bodies are different. And so if, as we're doing this, it doesn't work for you, and you find that the 4 seconds I am calling for will have you gasping, don't do that. Do what works for your body. So inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to keep doing this with my hands, but silently, so that I might too breathe. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Breathe normally, whatever that means for you. Let us continue with our shared breath at whatever pace feels comfortable, whatever pace helps you settle here into your seat. For some of us, it is work to remain silent. There is no doubt. Our bodies and our spirits are made differently. But we gather in silence, sharing a moment of quiet, because for some, it is the only time it happens all week long. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, God of many names, no name at all, and one abundant love, source of endings and beginnings. You keep going around and around and around. We gather in silence, and for some of us, it is a cry from deep within. Our weeks are too full. There is too much to do, and it is not always clear what is right. This is a prayer for all of us who wonder if we are worthy outside of the work that we do. May there be a promise beyond productivity. May we know that we are worth more than what we can do. May we know that we are worthy and good, worthy of love and dignity, worthy of respect and a voice, worthy of the space we take up, beyond anything we can say or do or produce. None of us here are only what we can do. All of us here are good and worthy simply by virtue of being here. May we know that deep within our souls. May our gathering affirm that for those who need to hear this message. May our presence be a simple gift. All that is needed, all that is already done. Here in our gathering, we affirm all that we carry in our lives. It is a place of affirmation and comfort, but also transformation and growth. Here in this space of prayer and contemplation, I invite each of you to call to mind an instance this week in which you were invited or challenged to grow. A time when you have been grieving or filled with gratitude for all that life brings you. Here in community, having brought to mind something in your life that grounds you in this living, I invite you to rise in spirit. And if you're online, to write into the chat something of your life, something of the growth, the gratitude, and the grief that you carry, that you hope to be witnessed here in community. And here in the sanctuary, I invite you to rise in body, to make your way to one of the center aisles, and to kindle a light, to make manifest all that happens in your personal life that you hope to lay at the altar of community. May the people rise and bring your grief, your gratitude, and your growth to our shared tables. By the light of these flames, may we offer thanks for being in community. May we disavow our Puritan heritage here on this land that has tricked us into a myth that we are only worthy if we are working. May we ground ourselves here in this land of lush abundance, of interdependence, of only taking as much as we need, and of knowing that we are held in the palm of love. Amen, and blessed be.
Each week, members and friends generously contribute to our offering, which helps us sustain and grow our community. This collection supports the work and witness of our church, and each week we give half of this collection to a partner organization working to create a more just and loving world. This week we are sharing the plate collection with the Center for Youth to support the Arnett House, their homeless shelter for LGBTQ youth. Up to 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ, while only making up 7% of the general population. Many factors contribute to this disparity, including the intersections of homophobia and transphobia, failed systems, poverty, and abuse. The Arnett House provides emergency shelters, transitional and permanent housing, referrals, advocacy, and more, setting the youth they support on a course for stability and self-sufficiency. The Arnett House was nominated by our welcoming congregational team, which works to ensure the First Unitarian is a church that is intentionally welcoming and affirming of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer members and friends. You can give online at donate.rochesterunitarian.org or by Venmo or in the baskets being passed by our ushers. Please give generously, as our offering will now be received with gratitude.
There's a life that I was meant to lead, a life like nothing I have known, and I can feel it, and it's far from here. I've got to find it on my own. Even now I feel its heat upon my skin, a life of passion that pulls me from within, a life that I am aching to begin. There must be somewhere I can be astonishing. I'll find my way. I'll find it far away. I'll find it in the unexpected and unknown. I'll find my life in my own way. Today, here I go, and there's no turning back. My great adventure has begun. I may be small, but I've got giant plans to shine as brightly as the sun. I will blaze until I find my time and place. I will be fearless, surrendering modesty and grace. I will not disappear without a trace. I'll shout and start a riot, be anything but quiet. Just you wait, I'll be astonishing, astonishing, astonishing. At last.
Thank you. Our reading this morning comes from Carpe Jugulum by Terry Pratchett. And it's a dialogue, so I'm going to need a little bit of help here from Reverend Sherry.
I get to be Granny.
Are we mic'd on you? Good?
Oh.
Yes. So it's a dialogue between two characters. Oates, who is a sort of a patriarch, a bishop of some kind in his religious and spiritual tradition, and he's being interrogated a little bit by Granny Weatherwax, a wise, wizened old witch who is somewhat outside the halls of religiosity that Oates is in. In any case, they are talking, and Oates says, well, for instance, there's a very interesting debate raging at the moment among the clergy about the nature of sin, for example.
Well, and what do they think? Against it, are they?
Well, it's not as simple as that. It's not a black and white issue. There are so many shades of gray.
Nope.
Pardon?
There's no gray. It's only white that's got grubby. I'm surprised you didn't know that. Well, and sin, young man, is when you treat people as things, including yourself. That's what sin is.
It's a lot more complicated than that.
Nope, it ain't. When people say things are a lot more complicated than that, they mean, well, they're getting worried that they won't like the truth. People as things. That's where it starts.
Oh, I'm sure there are worse crimes.
But it starts with thinking that people are things.
Here endeth the reading. Well, happy Labor Day. Now, I know it's not actually Labor Day today in our country. That, of course, is in September. But in most of the world that has a Labor Day, with the exception of Canada and the United States, Labor Day is celebrated today, on May 1st. But the choice of this date to honor Labor Day and the labor movement actually has a lot to do with history right here in the United States. Some of this history you may know, but some of you may not, and I'll go through it as briefly and succinctly as I can, so bear with me. When the organization that is currently known as the American Federation of Labor was campaigning for the 8-hour workday in the late 19th century, May 1st was selected as a day to make a nationwide strike begin. It was set as a deadline for employers or government to make this 8-hour workday a standard practice or face a general strike. The concession of an 8-hour workday, of course, was not made, and so protests began on May 1st, 1886. On May 3rd, a worker who was on strike in Chicago was killed by police. And so a rally was organized by anarchists and labor movement organizers at Haymarket Square. At that rally, after the rally, as police dispersed the remaining crowd, a stick of dynamite was thrown, and police opened fire themselves. And this all caused chaos, leaving several civilians and several officers dead, and many, many more injured. 8 anarchist organizers were convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, even though most of them were not even at that place at that time. 4 of them were executed by hanging, even though no evidence was ever produced to connect anyone to that stick of dynamite. This violent escalation from both police violence and the state legal apparatus became known as the Haymarket Affair, and it prompted worldwide protests and is credited with galvanizing the international labor movement. After just a few years, May 1st was named an international labor holiday. Now, the 8-hour workday and other vital regulations were finally put into place 50 years later in the 1937 Fair Labor Standards Act. However, the protections in that act for workers, these protections that contributed to a strong middle class in the mid-century, the strongest the United States has ever seen, these protections have slowly been chipped away and made toothless by corporate greed and by corporate lobbying in the almost century since then. And so, in a strange, cyclical, history repeating itself kind of way, when 6 workers died in an Amazon warehouse in Edwardsville, Illinois this past December, when this happened in the midst of climate chaos-fueled tornado outbreaks, when this happened because the building, which was built in the last few years in a region commonly called Tornado Alley, was not built to withstand strong tornadoes. And because even as the storm raged, workers were pressured to continue working rather than seek shelter. When all of this happens, it's hard not to think of that history of labor exploitation and harm 100 years ago. It's hard for me not to think of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York City in 1911. At this time, it was fairly common practice for companies and factories to lock their workers in their buildings. This was to reduce truancy, to reduce theft, to reduce even workers taking a break. And so when a fire broke out at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory, hundreds of workers ended up losing their lives because, first of all, there weren't proper alarm systems to alert workers on different floors that a fire had broken out on the 8th floor. And secondly, when they tried to escape, they found only a locked door and a horrible, deadly fate. This tragedy, shocking perhaps to those who weren't familiar with the commonplace exploitations of labor at the time, did spur organizing and reform in New York City to provide safer and healthier working conditions. And today, we do have regulatory bodies, government agencies, things like the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, and these do, and the laws that they enforce, do a lot to help protect people. But again, I have to stress that many of these labor regulations and safety practices and safety agencies have been effectively defanged in the decades since their inception. For instance, the OSHA report, they finished their investigation into the Edwardsville tornado strike at the Amazon facility. The report just came out this past week, and it did find multiple safety risks that contributed to the deaths of the workers. But OSHA is either declining or simply incapable of issuing a fine or any other repercussion. And instead, it is simply urging Amazon to do better and pointing them towards resources to provide health and safety for their workers, but these are only recommendations, not requirements. So all of these things, the Haymarket affair, the Edwardsville factory warehouse tornado strike, the Shirtwaist factory fire, this is a lot of history and a lot of information and context. And again, some of you may have already known this history or some of it, but I bring it all back into our consciousness this morning to keep it in mind as the background and the situation at play the next time you hear someone say or complain, "Nobody wants to work anymore." And instead, I invite you to interrogate why someone might reasonably be withholding their labor. Here's a quote from Jacobin Magazine, an article about the increasing rate of deaths and injuries at Amazon workplaces across the country. The corporation's poor safety record and sky-high staff turnover are caused by one thing: treating people as disposable is better for Amazon's profits. It starts with thinking about people as things. That's the root of sin, as articulated by Terry Pratchett's Granny Weatherwax. Writing in the 90s, Pratchett no doubt was influenced, among others I'm sure, but influenced by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who often warned in his speeches about the thingification of people as he worked to support interracial labor organizing and rallied against the 3 evils of racism, materialism, and militarism. And this thingification goes against Unitarian Universalist beliefs and values. Our first principle is affirming and promoting the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And if all people have inherent worth and dignity, which they do, then any corporation or economy or government that operates by or profits from the exploitation of people, from the disposability of people, from the thingification of people, is immoral and must change. And the good news is that change is coming, as it always is, one way or another. The labor movement that achieved so many successes by the 1930s, albeit hampered in recent decades, especially with the advent of the inaptly named right-to-work laws, this labor movement is coming back stronger in response to the current economic and health crisis of the 2020s. Since the pandemic began, there's been a marked uptick in strikes across all sectors and industries. You may recall having heard about ones at John Deere, Nabisco, Kellogg. Teachers in Minnesota were on strike quite recently. I'll just put it this way in a very sort of millennial articulation. Strikes during the COVID-19 pandemic is its very own Wikipedia page entry. Union organizing is having a boom. Workers in Staten Island recently unionized the first Amazon factory, and 40 Starbucks locations have recently become unionized, including 2 right here in Rochester. Nationwide, there's over 150 more stores to vote on whether to unionize later this year. And all of this, of course, is happening in a time of a great de facto strike, sometimes called the Great Resignation. People of all professions and industries have left jobs since the pandemic began, and many of them simply haven't returned. Some of them have found alternate means of supporting themselves, some have gone in to start their own businesses, but others have simply determined that it's better to be unemployed than to deal with the exploitation of labor. Or maybe they haven't put that way, but they haven't found a job that actually pays them enough to make it worth it for them to trade their labor in exchange. And so some would frame this issue in this era as a labor shortage. But I have made the shift in my language, and I encourage you to do the same, to talk instead about the wage shortage, about the childcare shortage, the healthcare shortage, the worth and dignity shortage. The fact is that corporations exist to extract as much profit as they can out of their business operations. And usually one of the most effective ways that they can do that is through paying and caring for their employees as little as possible. Nobody wants to work anymore. Of course they don't. Between the federal minimum wage stagnating for over a decade, issues of inflation, climate change, and other global crises increasing the cost of everything, with unsafe working conditions ranging from oppressive factories and unsafe conditions to sexual harassment being rampant in the restaurant and service industries, it's no wonder that people don't want to work. Though I would ask, is it that people don't want to work? Or is it that they simply don't want their labor to be exploited? Human beings do find meaning and purpose in their labor. We enjoy the satisfaction of a job well done. We enjoy being helpful and useful to ourselves, to our families, to our society. But when the labor of our body becomes sold at an hourly rate to a faceless corporation whose sole purpose is profit at any cost, well, I think that's when the beauty of labor becomes the nightmare of exploitative work. And so while there are various things that one can do to get involved in the labor movement and support safer and more dignified working conditions and livable wages for all, and support union organizing, what I find myself reflecting on this International Workers' Day, this May Day, and what I invite you to reflect on as well, is this question of work versus exploitation, of labor versus thingification. I invite you to ask these questions of yourself. What is my relationship to my own labor? What has it been over the course of my life? What is my relationship to the labor that others do? Am I able to benefit from the sweat equity of my work? or do others benefit? Which others? Am I able to balance my own work time and personal time? Do I follow the 8-hour workday, 40-hour-a-week standard? Or am I what might be called an extreme worker, what is called an extreme worker? This category, sort of in contrast to essential workers, extreme workers are those who work well more than 40 hours a week, sometimes up to 120 hours a week, because the work itself is so rewarding and the compensation is usually sufficient, if not ample, to allow this. I invite you to ask yourself, where is my life made easier by the labor of essential workers? Those who are usually paid minimally, but are the bones and muscles of the supply chain, of food preparation and delivery, of healthcare and other essential services. Do I push myself through burnout and exhaustion to work harder because I think, perhaps as the Puritans did, that is what will save me? Do I honor my own inherent worth and dignity as I work? Do I stand up for my own boundaries against people and forces that would eat up my time, my skills, and my energy? Do I have the capacity to? If I had to strike, to stop working because the conditions weren't safe or weren't economically sensible for my situation, would I actually be able to make that choice? Am I free enough to make those negotiations of my labor? Do I spend time in contemplation, perhaps gratitude, of the incomprehensible complexity of our world, of how much I depend on each other person and laborer and neighborer to create, and in many cases, literally build the structure and the structures in which I live my life? Can I see the interdependent web of life, the web of existence, the web of laborers whose work I contribute to and rely on, the interdependent web of which we are all a part? I wonder often about the relationship of myself to my labor and my relationship to the labor of others, and whether the system and society that I live in and participate in contributes to the flourishing of people or to the thingification of people. Our closing hymn comes to us from the women's suffrage and labor movement, often referred to by its closing refrain, "Bread and Roses." It is a call to that dignity piece, that anti-thingification, because we need our bread to eat, and we need to feed our fellow human their daily bread as well. But we also have need of roses. We have need of beauty and of dignity and even of frivolity, so that our work may be meaningful and cooperative labor for the flourishing of all, rather than the exploitation for the benefit of a few. May it be so.
May you please rise in mind, body, or spirit as we sing "As We Come Marching." As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 workshops gray, are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses.
Please remain standing and join me for our unison chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Let us march together for a future where we can secure the mutual flourishing for all and extinguish the evils of exploitation and thingification. It is simple. It just starts with treating people as people. Go in peace. Blessed be.